Thank you all for coming. And at this time, I'd like to ask Dr. George Brown for today's invocation. Please, George.
Let us bow our heads. Holy and eternal God, we ask that you be present today as we celebrate the lifelong achievements and service given to your world by those we recognize and honor today. We give you thanks for the grace that you graciously offer to your people of every time and every place. We especially give you thanks to all those, past and present, who have been guided by you to mold the lives of Helen Colleen Bark, Paul George Lapp, Larry Boggs, Jared T. Jacobs, and William Edward Peck Sr. We know that your grace is endless for those who seek to do all that is good in your world. We also know that your grace is endless for those who struggle and need your merciful presence in their lives. As we prepare to partake in this meal provided by you, we give you thanks for this food. We give you thanks for the hands that prepared this food. And we give you thanks for your presence as we share this meal together. And the people of God say, Amen. Amen.
Good afternoon. It got quiet in here for a while. That's when I knew everybody was eating. And now it's starting to get noisy again. So we're going to get this thing started. Thank you so much for being here today. Another beautiful day, a beautiful fall day. Thank the Lord for providing great weather. Of course, it has to do with being Fort Hill and the Hall of Fame, but we're thankful for that. And first off, we'd like to have a big welcome to Charles and Oscar's Catering for a tremendous meal. Thank you, Oscar. Thank you. They do a great job. At this time, I'd like to introduce the We Are Fort Hill Committee, and then I will go into a few things about that the committee does. But I am very happy to be the chairman of such a great group of people. They're so committed, so dedicated, and they do so much for the Fort Hill community. Sally Shreve, who is our vice chair, Ellen Arnone, Rena Christopher, Kathy Bloom, Jim Combs, Jim Hott, Harvey May Sr., Melissa Hensel, George Brown and Karen Brown, and Ben Brower, who couldn't be here today because he's celebrating his birthday in Baltimore. Anyway, thank you very much to the We Are Fort Hill Committee. Thank you very much. Some of the things we do at the We Are Fort Hill Committee, we started in 2009, and Ben Brower, Dr. Ben Brower, Allegheny grad, started this because he wanted to find a way to get positive information out on things that he was the vice principal at that time here at Fort Hill, how the positive information that Fort Hill was doing, things they were doing. So we have now evolved into different things. We do Senior Signing Day, which is, we had Larry Boggs and Jared Jacobs do Senior Signing Day yesterday. I think they enjoyed themselves. But the seniors all assemble in the auditorium, and these Hall of Fame inductees speak to them and give them ideas what they can do their senior year to succeed and get ready for when they leave high school and go after the rest of their careers. The signing day thing is patterned after the athletic signing period. It was a signing day for an athlete, how all the publicity came to that person. Well, this is for the whole senior class, and they have a huge banner that they all sign at the end of the event, and that banner hangs in the cafeteria, the class of 2023, throughout the year. So we're very happy to be a part of that. We are also involved with the Academic Achievement Banquet. We donate to that so that because we still have a lot of needy parents and things that need help. We love to help the high school financially in making sure that everybody at that academic banquet gets their recognition and enjoys what they've accomplished. Of course, our Hall of Fame, and of course the sidebar to that is our deeds not words. We'll get into that in a little bit. But we do that, and if no one's ever been down yet to see the World War II monument, please make an effort to go down and see that. That is down here where the pine trees used to be. Those old, diseased, dying pine trees. And it was getting pretty bad looking. But we took those trees down, and we caught a lot of heat. Because you're taking the trees down, it was change. And in that area was a World War II memorial, which was put up I think in 1947, but no one knew it was even there because it was hidden in the pine trees. So when we took the trees down, we were able to move the old memorial up. We made a new memorial. Eleanor Known was just tremendous with the research to find the names of all of the people from Fort Hill who gave their lives in World War II. And I think there was 37 names that we came up with. And we verified all of them, double-checked, triple-checked. And we haven't heard any complaints about who someone left out. But it's a beautiful memorial. It's down there. And now we have people coming by saying, boy, that opened up the area. You can really see the stadium. It's really beautiful. So if you just hang in there, things turn. And we're very happy with the World War II Memorial. So that's one thing. Another thing we did. So we're always here to help students for any type of individual needs. They have to go through a teacher or a guidance counselor or a principal canon. And as soon as that's approved, then the We Are Fort Hill Committee will be more than happy to reach out and help that student. So these are the kind of things we like to do. The last thing is a Christmas endeavor, because there are a lot of kids that don't have the finances, their parents or their family, to give them a decent Christmas. So we put together a list of people through the teachers and the guidance department, and we put a bunch of gifts together and present it to these kids at Christmas. So that's what we do, and we're very happy to be involved with Fort Hill in everything that we do. I'd also like to thank right now the 4 students that were your greeters today. I see 2. Thank you. Cassidy Claggett, I see you. And I see Allison Schultz. So what happened to Athena and Morgan? They had to leave. Okay. But one thing we found out, Morgan Giffen is the granddaughter of Bob Giffen. So, and you all remember Bob and how great a man he was, enthusiastic, and a Fort Hill guy through and through. So we thank you guys for helping out with the greeting today. Thank you much. So let's get into our festivities. The first inductee to the Hall of Fame this year from the class of 1969 is Larry Boggs. Now, in your program is the bios on these individuals. Not going to read all the bios because they're there for you, and you can look through it. But they're just impressive. That's why, because to make the Hall of Fame is a tough endeavor. What we do as the We Are Fort Hill Committee, we had 18 nominations this past year, 18 names on the list. We give out a ballot with an anonymous ballot to all of the 12 members of the Hall of Fame, of the We Are Fort Hill Committee. We give that ballot out, and those people vote either yes, they should be in the Hall of Fame, or no, they should not. And you need 9 of 12 yay votes to make the Hall of Fame. And I really have a lot of respect for the We Are Fort Hill Committee, but it's a tough crowd. It is a tough crowd. So to get 9 of 12 or more is just quite an accomplishment. So We had 3 this year. The first one's Larry Boggs. He graduated in 1969, earned a full scholarship for golf to the University of Maryland. He's now been a financial advisor for over 45 years, owns his own company, Boggs and Company Wealth Management. He spoke tremendously yesterday to the seniors at senior signing day. They really enjoyed what he said. And he resides in LaVale with his wife. His kids are here today. So very happy to present from the class of 1969, Larry Boggs. Watch this thing.
First step's a killer.
This thing falls off.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the big turnout for all of us. When I started to think about today, obviously to thank the committee. Can't hear?
Hold the mic.
Hold the.
Closer.
Lean in. Okay. I'm a lean back guy. Anyways, really to thank the committee, and it was a really surprise for me. I would be remiss today without thanking Ellen for nominating me. I don't really know her as Ellen. In the family, she's Big L. Many of you weren't there, but I think 7 years ago, I gave this same speech, but for my father-in-law, Henry. Many of you know as Bud. And the sad part about today is Bud's not here. I am really blessed that I have a really close family. It's not been close the last year. Starting a new company, a family company, it's been a challenge. The 3 daughters have been great during the transition. There's a lot of family here today. Ellen, obviously, Dottie and Wayne and Caden and Missy, and the 3 grandsons. Hey, Trey, you paying attention? I don't think you are. Okay. And Liam and Carter. So when you start looking back going to school here, you had so many great teachers, some not so great, but it's very hard to turn around and isolate or select, who meant the most to you. And you had some teachers that were so good encouraging you. Colleen being recognized, prime example. My old music teacher, Mr. Henson, if I remember. Guess what? He was so encouraging. I couldn't play an instrument. I couldn't sing. It was awful, but he was encouraging. On the other side, I had somebody like Madeline Newshaw or Mildred Watkins for math. I was so prepared going to the University of Maryland, taking calculus, taking physics, that was Mr. Leeson, but I was so prepared with the sciences that really made it easy and different for me. A surprise that I got when I went to the University of Maryland, I had taken French 7 or 5 years through middle school in Fort Hill. I didn't think I was a good French student. I made good grades. I went to Maryland, they tested me. I tested so high up that I was thinking about taking up Russian. I did not want to start French at that level. And I think back of little things at Fort Hill. Anybody remember the name Straight Line Strem?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, I wasn't good at mechanical drawing either, but I really needed a good grade. And a friend of mine and I went to him and said, we need some extra help. So a couple nights a week after school, we went in. And at first, he didn't really help us, but he left the shoes, if you want to call it the lab. Shortly, all of a sudden, he became an interest in us. Now, when I was there, I knew I would never use mechanical drawing. But guess what? He took the time and learned a lesson that if you go in and ask for help, somebody's there to help. A good friend of mine, Gene Combs, turned out to go into design work and actually became a mechanical drawing teacher at AC. Let me think about anything else I want to do today. Again, it's a great honor. The wife and I kind of talked about this a little bit. We have decided we want to start our own scholarship foundation, and we'd like to endow it immediately to the tune of $50,000. So the other thing I probably am remiss without saying is that because of Fort Hill, I met Deb. It was a life sentence. Okay. 45 years married and another 10 in between dating. So thank Fort Hill for that, and thank you for today. Appreciate it.
Look over there and step out. Look over there with your plaque.
All right.
No, step out, but I'll get out of it.
Okay. Thank you.
There you go, sir. One more time. One more time. You're not done yet. And we have more awards for you.
All right. One more time. Mark. Thank you.
This is our 9th Hall of Fame luncheon. We started in 2013. We've had them every year since. We were not able to have it in 2020 because of COVID and the pandemic. And then last year, we were kind of, wondering with the COVID, of course, it's still there, is, the Board of Education might come in because we had it up in the media center, which we used to call a library. But, could they come in and shut it down? But Principal Candy Cannon said, well, I'll take care of that. Let's have it outside in the courtyard. And so this is our second time out here, and it's just a beautiful setting. It's just beautiful. I mean, I can't think of a high school. This was built in 1936. It's 86 years old. And to have a courtyard like this, to have a luncheon in the school outside, is just tremendous. So unless we get a heavy rainstorm that day, and the Lord's always good to Fort Hill on Hall of Fame weekend, but unless we have a heavy rain or a big heat wave, we're going to be here because it's a tremendous setting. So I'd like to also recognize some of the past Hall of Fame inductees that are here today. From the 2012 inductees, from the class of 1958, Dr. Ed Root. From the class of 2013, CWO4 James Combs. Oh, there he is. I was wondering where you went. There you are. Okay. And also from 2013, Dr. Terry Ott Lally. From 2014, Dr. Linda Weber Dunbar. And from 2016, C. Michael Dickin, PhD, graduated in 1975. Mike? Our next inductee is, once again, you can read the bios. Commander Jared Jacobs graduated in 1993. Jared, yesterday, he's another guy that doesn't really need a mic. He will tell you what he thinks, and he might be talking up here when he gets done, but like he did yesterday at senior signing. But it was outstanding. Plus, he got introduced last night to the crowd, as did Larry and Mr. Peck. He had his old football jersey on, and I could see the holidays people looking at each other like, "Is he on the team?" He accepted an appointment to play football at the United States Naval Academy. And then he went on, got commissioned as a naval officer with the United States Navy. And I'm not positive about this, but I think the reason that he could not be a Top Gun is he was too big. He didn't fit into the plane. So, but he has had a tremendous career. Very happy he's back. Class of 1993, Commander Jared Jacobs.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Fort Hill. How's everyone doing? All right. Hey, I want to start off by saying thank you to Mr. Mangus, Principal Cannon, Ms. Arnone, and the We Are Fort Hill Committee. This has been a phenomenal weekend for not only myself, my family, and everybody that's here as well. So this is truly a blessing to be here. So thank you again for everything you've done this weekend for us. I really mean it. So the ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, it is an honor to be here. I can't tell you enough, but being selected amongst the many of my heroes, if you want to call it that have gone before us. And that's everything I've taught my sailors. So you're going to hear a lot of things that I used yesterday in the speech to not only the senior class, but those that have been throughout my Navy commands about those who have gone before us. Which leads to Mr. Boggs, Mr. Peck, you guys have been the ones that have gone before us to lay the groundwork to where we are today. And just as a side note, I know I can't donate the $50,000, but I could propose that we do a Fort Hill airline. We do have financial management, an aviator, and security, and the three of us can make one heck of a team. So, but I will say that it'd be a good team for sure. But yeah, after 30 years, 1992 was my senior year of football, graduated in 93. And 30 years later to be here, it's a blessing, and it's definitely a surprise when Mr. Mangus called me a couple months ago and told me I was selected. And so I know the Duvall family can't be here today, but evidently they were the ones that nominated me, so I can't say enough to say thanks to them as well. So before I go on, I do want to announce, though, last night, if you were at the game, it was an honor to see it, but I want to congratulate the team last night for kicking some butt, 49-10. They did a phenomenal job, and you'll see the tradition aspects, which I'll get involved too, but it felt like this is definitely home. Because coming back to see the little things that even Coach Calhoun started, Coach Latimer, Coach Merritt, Coach Snyder, when you see the MAD sticker on the back of the helmets, it's like the tradition still lives. So if you don't know what the MAD sticker was 30 years ago, find a way to make a difference. And that's why they got the MAD stickers. And just to see that on the helmets last night was awesome. Things I talked about to the senior class yesterday, again, it was phenomenal, and I'd love to come back to do it again. Basically, three themes that I told them. Number one was thank yous, a couple words of wisdom that I've learned along the way, and then family. And so I know it means a lot to me. So being back here as part of the family at Fort Hill is definitely a blessing. So those three things, I will say, like I told you, the family, the thank yous, words of wisdom, and family, is those are the sentinels who've gone before us, currently standing the watch, those who have stood the watch, and those who are coming up along the ranks. And that's what I told the senior class yesterday. It's not just about them, but it's also the 8th graders coming up and the 7th graders that are coming up, those who will stand the watch here at Fort Hill to carry on these traditions. So part of that is also the foundation that's built here. And I told the students yesterday, you're learning your foundation now. You have not built your house. This is the groundwork. When you go on after graduation here, that's where you build your walls. And then once you get your career started, that's where you put the roof on the house. So this is the foundation part of it. And that kind of, I used the President Truman's announcement one time was, America was not built out of fear. It was built on courage, imagination, and unbeatable determination to do the job at hand. Every day you have a challenge, take it on. And if you feel, and you will fail, but if it's how you get back up and make it happen again. And continue that, but before you know it, you will succeed. So those small words, I hope they take to heart. And even Ms. Arnone told me yesterday, the yes sirs and no sirs and the yes ma'ams, no ma'ams, that means a world of difference, especially to all of us, even here today. And so she was surprised that even the students that came up to help her clean up, they started saying yes ma'am, no ma'am. So anyhow, so I was glad to see that they were on par with it. Part of those who've gone before us, though, it falls into the thank yous. And so I'm going to do a little something, and they'll come up here in a minute, but my big thank yous, first of all, I told them is a family. So if you wouldn't be here without mom, dads, aunts, uncles, grandparents, so on and so forth, is the families. My wife, my kids, they made who I am today. So if it wasn't for them and all the little small things to make it to where we are, it goes for all of us. I want to say thank you. That falls next in line, not only that, but teachers. Mr. Burke, I know your mom was my number one. She was a hard charger. And I would be honest with you, I got in trouble with her. She's like, you didn't write this, did you? And I was like, because I was just making things up about a book we had to read, but she corrected me. And from that day forward, man, that's where the word integrity comes right back into play. She didn't even have to use a wooden paddle. It was already well known. But so, and then Mr. James, and then you brought up Miss Watkins. She's on my list here. Oh my God. Whoever thought when I made it to the Naval Academy, I didn't even know calculus or computer calculus existed. But she, when I had come back to town, she was like, oh yeah, it exists, so here's how you do it. So she was always somebody I looked up to as well. So the teachers, that was what I led to yesterday for the students, to always thank your teachers. Not only do they think of you during the class, but when they go home, they're thinking you as well. What's next? So on and so forth. And that leads me to my coaches. Some are not here today, but the majority of them are, and I can't thank you enough for making the trip here to be here today. So Coach Calhoun, he was my head coach at the time. Coach Merritt, Coach Latimer, Coach Snyder, and those who can't be here today, of course, I tried, I just couldn't find their number, but Coach Courtney, Coach Smith, and then he's gone before us, is Coach Alkire. So I don't want anybody to forget that. Those are my root and potatoes who, like I was joking with Coach Merritt, ever since him, he's always taught me to take off. And I'll get to that story in a minute, but I want you to keep that in mind. I talked about the foundation aspects. Those foundations begin here, yes, 52 steps. My 3 boys, and of course my daughter didn't really understand. Last night when we were at the game, you were afraid to lose at any game as a freshman because Coach Merritt and Coach Smith, we knew if we lost to, I'll never forget, we lost to Northern JVs by 6 points. Well, that's 6 points. If you multiply that by 4, is one heck of a number of 52 steps. And if by chance your shoulder just nipped Coach Smith or Coach Merritt coming up those steps, that didn't count. So those 52 steps are well known going up and down, not to mention the stadium laps. So hence, take off when your coach is there, like take off, get going. That meant a lot to me because yes, you didn't say why. How come? Why do we got to do this again? You just did it. And to be honest with you, whoever designed the stadium, they forgot to leave the fence line open to keep them going around the stadium. So these kids are lucky today. The second thing I talked to them about was find a positive about each day. No matter what, find some way to make it a positive. I use I'm sure some of you all have seen it before. I did a lot of spec ops with the Navy SEALs throughout my life in a 26-year career. And I worked, believe it or not, with Admiral Craven through the ranks. And you look up on his video, he talks about making your bed. And my wife and I, we deal with that every day with our little ones. So it's just the one positive you could take. You get up in the morning and you make your bed so that you could have the worst day of your life. But at the end of the day, you came back and you were like, I made a bed, and it's one little aspect that makes it that much better each day. I took that, and believe it or not, Coach Calhoun, you don't realize, but one practice, you were like, man, it's a blessing to be up here every morning. I remember the words to today. Every day you get to put your feet on the deck, stand up, it's a blessing. And that's why I added that into Admiral Craven. You always try to find the positives. At least you make your bed, you come back the next day, and you do it all again, and you learn from the past, and you make it happen. So that's the second thing I told them. Thirdly, enjoy every minute. Enjoy life. The work that you do will lead you to better opportunities down the line. And stand your ground, even though it gets tough. And what I was meaning to that is, that leads into the next, is I asked all the kids, and this includes all of us here, I said, do you believe you're leaders? And no one's hands came up except for 3 or 4. I said, guess what? You're leaders. You guys as a senior class, each and every one of you is a leader in this room. And why? Well, because the juniors, sophomores, so on and so forth even believe in you, because they look up to you. And I said, even though people graduate before you, adults, we look at you. You're the next leadership in line. And so they took that to heart, which kind of made me feel good. But I said, you have to live life as a leader. And I pulled out my cell phone. I said, what I see today from a society standpoint, we live through our cell phones. We're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. We all are. But when you go to a sports game, everyone's watching the sports game through the phone instead of enjoying the moment. And that's what was my point. Enjoy the moment. Enjoy every minute. Sure, take your photos. Sure, take your videos. But actually enjoy life as it comes. And so that's what also I relayed to them as well. I talked to them about short-term goals where your goal is, yes, graduation. But I made them all stand up, and I said, in 9th grade, I remember my very first day. Coming in, and I had Chris Castle, who's our assistant principal here. Godlove, who would have thought he's our security guard here, right? So, but yes, I looked up. Those were the seniors and the juniors. But as a freshman, you come in and you see those guys, and you're like, wow, those are some big guys. But as a freshman, you realize That's our leadership. And so the short-term goal is like, but it's going to long 4 years to get through here. You get to the Naval Academy, that's a long 4 to 5 years to get through it. But what I was taught throughout this was, look at Thanksgiving, it's just around the corner. That's your short-term goal. Once you get there, then there's Christmas. And before you know it, it's springtime. And after springtime, then it's summer and your graduation's over. So if you set those short-term goals throughout, no matter what we do, you will eventually get to your goal of achievement. The camaraderie. The best part about being here is the camaraderie you see in Fort Hill. When I walked back into the school yesterday, you could just feel the camaraderie. Nothing has changed. It's gotten better if there was a change. And just seeing the family here, you know everybody is part of the family, so on and so forth. You talked about the next people in line from whatever family extended, Mrs. Burke, so on and so forth. Everyone down the line, there's some part of us, to include my family, my grandparents, all my aunts and uncles went to here. My dad and mom were teachers here, coaches here. So you guys mean the world to me because we are that camaraderie, and it doesn't go away. It's the best fraternity, sorority someone could ever be blessed with. And I tell you, having been in the Navy 26 years and around the world, I kid you not, this is the best high school that I've ever come across, and please keep that proud and traditions going. I kind of ended it with them. I said, you know, being in different commands throughout my time, you pick up from good leadership, you find the bad leadership, and you find the really horrible leadership. I told them to pick and choose from each one. You might have a bad leader, but that's okay, because why? It teaches you. And we do that every day as well. Take from the good, take from the bad, and become your own foundation and build your house from there. And in the end, they'll become phenomenal leaders themselves. I left them with the Vince Lombardi kind of quote, which the coaches had taught me back in the day, was an individual's commitment to a group effort is what makes a team. A teamwork, a company work, society work, and a civilization work. And those people who work together in the event, just like this, at the end, just like this school, you become victorious. You become a team, but not only that, you become victorious and you're winners. So that being said, you guys at this school, you've made me try to be the best leader and a winner in everything I do. I left them also with this, that when I had a command in a squadron with 450 sailors, you know, equipment, you name it, I taught them 4 letters is NOSC, something they could remember by. So as a Navy family, you can't do anything without the family. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you all. So families first. Operational supremacy, why? Be the best. I talked about you will fail, but you get back up and you do it right. That's operational supremacy. I want to be the best. Okay, and then the next was stewardship. A freshman could teach a senior could teach a freshman. It flows both ways. Be that stewardship, no matter what age or rank you are. Always be the best. And then last but not least, which these group of gentlemen taught me as well, was commitment with character. I see it today, but it's one thing God gave us that no one can take away from it. It's how we utilize it. Commitment with character, but it equals integrity. And I was telling them, even though no one's watching you, do what is right, even though nobody's watching you. And that's what I teach my boys and girls, and my wife and I, is commitment with character. Even if it's doing something so simple, but you cheat and cut the corner, that's your integrity that's being taken away. So hopefully they took that on board. So my family, my Sentinel family, thank you again for everything you've done to make me who I am today. So I'll go move on. The first part is my family here. My grandparents started there, my aunts, uncles, my Uncle Bob, my Uncle Mark, my Uncle Ray, Aunt Linda who's here with us, and my other aunts who can't be with us today. But there's so many stories, there's a lot of moonshine stories in that, but I'll keep that for later. But they've taught me everything I've known. Before and after that leads on to, they've taught me the right things to take on to my beautiful wife, Stacy. My sons, Jake, Jared, Austin, Juliana. I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for me to get me to this point. So thank you again. A quick war story that also kind of built my foundation was my parents. So 2 stories, not to kind of bore you, but I think I was 7th and 8th grade. So grades started to dwindle a little bit, got the B's and C's. So mom kind of, without bringing the wooden spoon, was like, look, okay, if you wanted to go this route, you keep your grades down at this level, you'll have fun in the military when you graduate high school. I'm not going in the military. So I busted my butt, got straight A's, or tried to get straight A's, and I still ended up in the military. So here you go. So the next was the other story from my dad was, this was when I was in elementary school, 5th or 6th grade, basketball. I was it was right before halftime, took a jump shot, whatever, and I came down wrong. And this is a get tough story. Halftime, I could barely walk on my right foot. We go into the locker room, and my dad comes in the locker room and talks to the coach. He said, let me see him. Sure enough, take the shoe off, and I couldn't touch it. He goes out in his work truck, he comes back in, and I kid you not, I should get advertisement on it. My dad comes back in with a roll of duct tape. And I continue, he wrapped my foot in duct tape and said, get your rear end back on the court. I played the entire second half with duct tape wrapped around my foot and sock, only to find out that night later, I go to the hospital to get an x-ray, and sure enough, it's broken. So duct tape does work to get you through a game if you ever need that. As you know, they talk about, certain things that you bring back memories here. Well, when I was a kid, at this tall, coming to the high school, seeing from the teacher standpoint, but being even the homecoming games, as a little kid, you want to be a part of that. So that's part of the traditions I talk about, is being a kid, wanting to be back here every single day of the week. That's how I ended up becoming a Fort Hill Sentinel. Speaking of family, we talked about here today, not forgetting those, we talked about my grandparents, my aunts, uncles. Again, thanks for everything you've done for me. You guys have definitely led me to be my own leadership, commanding officer, mentor, a sports coach now. Believe it or not, I'm trying to take after you all. I'm a coach down at the middle school in Charlotte, and definitely it's got its challenges along with the schedule, but you've taught me that as well. To my friends that have made me, they're not here with us, but the Rob Adams, the Chris Budds, the Keith Perlazzis, Danny Mays, Scott Angelo, Chad Turners, I could go on here and bore you, but all those guys, they were my family as a senior class and made me also who I am today, so I can't thank them enough. This is the big part to me, and this, so bear with me here, but I have a little token appreciation. To my coaches, it's kind of tough, but Coach Calhoun, Coach Latimer, Coach Merritt, Coach Snyder, if you don't mind, come on up. So this is an honorary coach, this next person, believe it or not, and I'm honored that this here is Mr. Burke. Come on up, Mr. Burke. Believe it or not, folks, these guys here are made me who I am. So, somewhere along the lines in the last 26 years, these wings were on deployment with me somewhere around the world on a mission. And just something simple to say thanks. So, there you go. But it's just something simple to say thanks for what they've done for me. But these are part of my naval wings that while I was on deployment, that I want them to take to heart. There you go, boss.
Thanks, Chair.
Yes, sir. Coach?
Coach, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations.
Thank you. You gotta give me a minute. This is like getting pinned.
Your wife's help.
What's that?
You need her help.
So speaking of which, in my retirement ceremony, while I'm doing this, my wife didn't realize it, but she, in the Navy, we have supply officers. So she didn't know, but I ended up giving her a supply officer pin. She keeps me straight.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Here, wait a minute. That's wrong one. Wait a minute. Time out. Here you go. Hold, put that on, Coach.
Time out. There was a good
Time out.
Well, she messed
Still time out.
That's all right.
with the wrong one.
Here you go, Coach.
How about you?
Thanks, boss.
Am I in it? Well,
Yep. Thank you. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. All right, Mr. Burke. I'll tell you, each one of these gentlemen have a, as I do this, have a story. Coach Calhoun, believe it or not, when we were out of practice one day to get us tougher, I know he probably remembers this, but, and I don't know how true it is. Thank you. Appreciate it. He said he used to run his hand through a mulberry bush with razor sharp thorns. So that day everybody's like, I don't know if he's real, if it's a lie, but we took it as real, so we didn't mess around anymore with him to make sure, because he was going to put our hands through a mulberry bush. So that made us tougher. Coach Snyder, there was this one, we lost the game, and I'll never forget Coach Snyder one day. He was like, man, I was so mad. It was my junior year, and just took my helmet and hit it against the wall. Because, you're frustrated after a loss. He's like, knock it off. That's not how you treat your equipment. You're going to learn the right way. If you're mad, you would have won and made it happen and made it better. And sure enough, the next game, he taught me to, hey, you don't beat down your equipment because that's what's there to protect you, number one. But number two, take that frustration and make yourself better for the next victory that you're about to do. So thanks, Coach. Appreciate that one. Coach Latimer, I can't say enough about Coach Latimer, but I will say in my speech I had to take a couple words and kind of keep it out of there because I think it would have been a little redundant. But do you remember the word reiterate?
Yes.
Yes. So, Coach Latimer, I love him. He was our line coach. He would beat the heck out of us every single day, of course, but in a good way. But he goes, I'm going to reiterate. Do you remember what happened last week? Yes, Coach. I'm going to reiterate. Do you remember what Coach Calhoun said? Yes, Coach. Everything was like, you remember basically what he's saying. Remember what you've learned so you can take it on in every day's life. So thanks, Coach, for keeping that going. Coach Merritt, I already kind of gave you the prelude about taking off. So if you remember, we were just breathing hard and heavy after just running through 2 hours of practice, and we knew it was coming. But the stadium laps, 52 steps. If you get in, and all you'd have to say is, take off. So we knew exactly what he meant, but to take off. But I will say this, Coach. Coach Merritt was my foundation to go up into the next ranks of being with the varsity aspects of the varsity team. There's no excuses. Don't make an excuse for anything. Get it done. Just get going, because otherwise I'm going to stand here all night until you get that stadium lap done or get the 52 steps done, because you're going to make it and you're going to make it right. So, Coach, thanks again for everything. So now, Mr. Burke, the reason Mr. Burke, I told my kids today at lunch that Mom Burke, she was one of my toughest teachers here as well, but in a good way. And I think that's her foundation to making me better. Was, well, as a commanding officer, you got to write a lot of letters to admirals. And if that dot and I, cross and T wasn't right, well, I thought of your mom all the time about that. So you had to make it right before you start sending things up the chain. And she was my foundation for that. On top of that, as a kid, and I'm sure I don't know how it's done here nowadays because everything's on the internet, but even as a freshman, you would always go right to the sports page. So this guy here is my guiding light, because it made you want to be better. Because why? Yeah, as a kid, you want to be highlighted in the sports page. But so Mr. Burke was a huge part of that. The funniest story I got to know about Mr. Burke was several years back. This is and Coach Calhoun, you know this, you and Coach Latimer. So this is a good one. In order to make it off to the next set of, hey, you're on the varsity, let's get going, especially your senior year, Coach had set a standard that everybody on the team had to pass a 7-minute mile run. So I was 270 pounds at the time, I think, 265 maybe. But that was my goal. And it worried me crazy from May, June, July, because August was coming quick, and you had to pass that 7-minute mile before the first practice. Coach Calhoun even met me at 6 o'clock at night down the track. All right, let's get going. Yep, 8:40. Oh, God bless. I got it down to 8:10. Holy cow. And then he even taught me what he's like, because I work with Dad all the time on construction. So you're out on a construction site at that age group. Of course, you don't know what you eat and drink a Coke or whatever. He's like, quit drinking the sodas. So from that day forward, it was water, and then it got maybe 15 seconds better. But every day, I ran a mile. And I think it got to the point, now that I know the truth behind the story, one day I was bound to determine, I'm getting this because I'm tired of running a mile every day to get time. But man, I put my heart and soul into it. Didn't stop. And I came across the line at 6:58. 2 seconds to spare. Well, evidently 15, 20 years goes by, and then I got my heart broken.
That's why I'm here.
I know. I knew there was a hidden secret there. I just kept telling myself 6:58 was my best ever. But Mr. Burke had been talking to Coach Calhoun. He's like, yeah, that was a good 7:30 or whatever it turned out to be.
Well, I believe Jared was the top winner at the Dapper Dan dinner that night, and Barry, you were the coach of the year that year, but you weren't able to make it. So I was telling actually a story at Barry's expense. and Jared busted his arse to make that mile time. And the whole idea of it was, try your best, try your hardest, achieve a goal and go for it. And it really isn't important what the time was. But I mentioned this, at Fort Hill there was a mile time. And Jared, sitting at the dais, just proud as a peacock, said, I made my mile time. And I said, no you didn't.
So now I got to tell myself it's 7:30. But again, in a serious note, thank you for taking the time to hear my stories here, because this means the world to me to be part of the Hall of Fame. Not only that, but these gentlemen are my Hall of Famers. To look up to somebody, and they were my guiding light to make me who I am today. This is this set of gentlemen right here. So again, coaches, thanks for everything. Mr. Burke. Thank you. Yes, sir. Appreciate it. That's for mom too. That's for mom as well.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Cherish.
Now, so in closing, the ceremony today could not have been completed and accomplished without the efforts and support of each member of the We Are Fort Hill. So again, thank you for what you've done. The efforts you put into is just beyond recognizable. It's amazing what you all do. So again, for all of us, from me to you, thanks. As I mentioned before, in reality, the real reason why we all come together, not only for an induction ceremony or event such as this, but as a reminder of our Fort Hill history, what we stand for, and that we are a strong Sentinel family. Ladies and gentlemen, before I get off stage, I want to acknowledge that. So please join me in acknowledging those who helped make this day possible, specifically the We Are Fort Hill family. So thank you. I want to wish everyone the very best in life, whatever road takes you. May the winds always be at your back and sunlight on your face as you navigate through the calm waters, and hopefully one day soon, we'll all meet up here again together. Thank you again for being here today. I look forward to celebrating the rest of the afternoon with you. May God bless you and the Sentinel family. Thank you. There we go. We got the balloon in the way.
We got the camera over here.
Are we good?
Thank you.
This is Bed Bath & Beyond Christmas.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Take care. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Jared. I remember that dinner, the Dapper Dan. Jared was a top award winner. On the dais that night, however you say it, was Jeff Bostic, who was a Hog with the Washington Redskins. He had a Super Bowl ring on. And also on the dais that night was Sammy Perlazzo. He had his World Championship ring from the Cincinnati Reds. And Leo Mazzoni had his championship ring from the Atlanta Braves. And Jared looked up, and all this hardware was just glittering all over the dais. And Jared said, well, I got this state championship ring. And one of the guys yelled out, well, that's a good starter set, son. I still remember that. Yeah. Okay, our third Hall of Fame inductee. Once again, read the bios because they're just fantastic. But is Mr. William E. Peck Sr. from the class of 1956. He graduated and he broke one of the racial barriers by integrating Fort Hill High School when he graduated. He enlisted in the Army, but after that, where he really flourished was when he attended the Metropolitan Police Academy, went to the FBI Academy in Quantico, and just had a star-studded, award-winning career in law enforcement. He continued to be active in all the things he had done in the community, and he was even, in 2013, the NAACP Freedom Fund Dinner keynote speaker. So just a fantastic career. Please help me welcome, from the class of 1956, Mr. William E. Peck Sr.
I was asked to speak, I wondered what I was going to say. I've given many speeches. I've always written a speech, went over it, but then my pastor told me, speak from your heart. So I don't have a prepared speech. But what I will say, I will say from my heart. Last night, when I stood on that 50-yard line at the stadium, I thought to myself, this is the same school that everybody fought so hard against me attending, not even want me to come through the door. And all these years later, I'm standing here at the 50-yard line, being inducted to the same school Hall of Fame. For those of you that weren't born in '56, let me give you a brief history. 54, 55, 56, a black man in this city. I couldn't walk into a restaurant and sit down and eat. I couldn't go into a clothing store and try on clothes. If I did, white people wouldn't buy them. I couldn't go get a haircut. White barbers wouldn't cut my hair. I get emotional speaking about this. But with that background, in 1954, 55, 56, when the schools became integrated, young black kids were blown up in churches in protest. Governors surrounded their schools with National Guard to keep black kids from coming in. Little black students had to hold the hands of U.S. Marshals just to walk through the jeering crowds. We didn't have that level of violence here, but the outcry was just as loud. We were told we were going to destroy the educational system in Allegheny County. As a black kid from Central Avenue always wondered, how was I going to bring down the whole educational system? In my class of 1956, you know what we went through. We had teachers that didn't want us together. City officials didn't want us together. The Board of Education was outraged that white and black students were going to school together. And they let us know that through our whole year. But what they didn't expect, that the white kids and the black kids would become friends. They never expected that. And I see some of my members out there in my class smiling because we became good friends. No matter what the teachers said, no matter what the Board of Education said, no matter what city officials said. To show you how deep the hatred can go. When we graduated in 1956, we set a history. We were first class in Allegheny County to graduate from an integrated school, our class. My family and other officials asked the Board of Education, city officials, would they honor our class? And we were told they would not honor anything that involved white and black students. My family's sitting here as I've preached to them. Don't fall in the pattern of hatred. No matter what their people are saying about you, what they write about you, you know who you are. Don't fall into the dark side. Look for the beautiful things in life. Look to the joys in life. Don't ever stop fighting. Don't ever stop fighting. Never give up. Never give up. I tell my cousins, they try to keep our history from being taught. If any mention of black history in schools today, the teachers will be fired. They'll be transferred. We can teach our history. You tell my grandkids, your kids, my history, my story. Just as importantly, tell them your story. They can't stop us from passing our history on to each other. But don't give up. Don't think every white person out here is your enemy. It's not so. The good people far outnumber the bad people. As we sit here today, you see politicians, government officials telling us we're not human beings. You have court decisions that said we're property. I'm nobody's property. You're nobody's property. You're a human being. You're a creation of God. Never forget that. Never let your faith in God waver. Never give up hope. Keep fighting. Keep fighting. Never give up. To my classmates, nobody else wants to recognize us. I recognize you today. I'm a proud member of the class of 1956. A lot of people don't realize how hard we fought. We had an incident where we had a bunch of fools riding around in trucks with Confederate flags in the back of them. They harassed the kids walking to Fort Hill. Mrs. Cooper and I and others, parents and grandparents of kids at Fort Hill, we organized our own group, Concerned Citizens. Our purpose was to protect the kids at Fort Hill and to work with the officials at Fort Hill. It got so bad that some of our young men would ride through the streets following our young kids to school to protect them. We told them, don't get in confrontation with them. And they were in Fort Hill's parking lots with Confederate flags, with the same rhetoric, same hateful talk. But we got through that. Then our group, while we were trying to have dialogue with the officials at Fort Hill, when the publicity broke about the harassment of the black students going to Fort Hill, black family, fled Cumberland out of concern for the safety of her children. Story was picked up by the Washington Post. Black family flees Cumberland, fear of their life. When that went national, our group got many requests from outside groups wanting us to respond. Could they join us? We said no. This is our school. This is our city. We will handle this. We decided we would protest to the Board of Education. We petitioned to ban the Confederate flag, any form of hate, swastikas, anything from school. And as I sat there, I read the petition. We kept our group just parents and grandparents. There comes another white civic group, a young son dressed in a Confederate uniform, brought in another group from Virginia, Sons of the Confederacy. A young man there, that's the first time he ever seen me lose my temper. But I calmed down. I sat before the Board of Education, I read our petition, listened to the stupid comments, but we still worked with Fort Hill. When the basketball team from downstate took their football team off the field, accused football players of using the N-word, we still had a system in place, the community and Fort Hill administrators. We handled all of that. We handled that together. We could talk to each other. If we could just sit down and talk to each other, we could solve these problems. If we just sit down and talk. To my family, you see, right today, politicians talking about critical race theory, not even taught in high schools. Ask them what it means, they can't even tell you. They tell you we're doing this to protect the white students. You ask them, what are you doing about the black students? How has it affected them? They don't have an answer. They don't have an answer. Unless we can come together as one, white, black, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, if we cannot come together as one, we will perish separately as fools. Country, family cannot stand divided. I hope and pray that we can come together, talk to each other. Just because I have a different opinion than you have, I'm not your enemy. In my Bible, it says if you stand up, speak the words I've written in your Bible, you'll be lied upon, you'll be slandered, you may be beaten, you may be even killed. If that's what I have to suffer, then so be it. Because I will always stand up for my principles. I will always stand up for what is written in my Bible. I don't care who walks away from me, family, friends. don't care. I stand on my own. God bless the class of 1956.
Jump on the other side there. Jump on the other side.
Thank you, Mr. Peck. Outstanding words. Let's have a round of applause for the three inductees, please. Larry Boggs, Commander Jared Jacobs, and Mr. William E. Peck, Sr. That concludes the first part of our program, which is the Hall of Fame. Before we get to the next part, I'd just like to say a few words about Greenway Stadium. I can hear the murmur already. Greenway Stadium was in bad shape, very poor shape in the last couple of years. The visitor side stands, the foundations had deteriorated in the visitor side stands, but they were in danger of coming down the hillside, probably full of people during an event. So that was that bad, plus the track was so bad that the coaches of Fort Hill, one of them's right here, Zach Alcar, coach of the boys team, and the female coach is Sarah Bennett. They wouldn't run track meets on the track because it was a health hazard to the participants. So we have started to renovate Greenway Stadium. Of course, the home side was done in 2010. In 2022, we had to do the visitor side stands first before we addressed the track, because you can't come across the new track and put stands up. You would just rip up the track. So the new stands have been constructed. And that was a hairy situation too, because we all know about the supply chain. And is the concrete going to be available? Is the steel going to be available? It was nip and tuck the whole time. But everything came through. They got the stands constructed, and now we have a beautiful 8-lane track, very well surfaced. Looking forward to that this spring, because being an ex-track guy back about 50 pounds ago, I was looking forward to going to some track meets, seeing some of these local athletes, outstanding athletes. And we have an 8-lane track, which means we now have an official track, which means we can host a regional track meet for the state here. And hopefully if they ever come up to Cumberland and see what we got, maybe a state meet. But we're very happy that we've gotten this far, but we do have a lot of things still to address. The lights, the sound, the building that has the bathrooms on the visitor side and the press box and the concession. We will get to these things. The Greenway Committee is another group of committed individuals, and we will see this through. We will get this done. That I can promise you. And we're going to keep Greenway Stadium. It was built in 1936, so it's 86 years old too. But we're going to keep that as the best high school sports stadium in the state. Now we go to Deeds Not Words. Deeds Not Words, the Hall of Fame are Fort Hill graduates. Deeds Not Words, it doesn't necessarily have to be a Fort Hill graduate. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. But these are the individuals that have done so much through the years for Fort Hill and to see Fort Hill advance. Our first award, the Deeds Not Words Awards, is Mrs. Colleen Burke. Now, I didn't have Mrs. Burke in English. So what I did is I reached out to my classmates of 1974, and they responded. Those who had her, and I said, give me some things you would like for me to say. Cherie Trail, I had her for senior English. The dreaded term paper. The day before I actually did this, I did the assignment. When she gave the papers back, she rolled up mine and bopped me on the head with it and said, what did you do, right, this past weekend? I had to admit the answer was yes. I don't know why she would, how she knew, because I got an A- on it. But she said great things are expected from the students in my class, and she was my absolute favorite. Marlene Matterly, I remember her as the pep club advisor, how she handled 2 and 3 school buses loaded with unruly high school kids. I don't know how she ever did that, and I wouldn't have been able to attend the away football games without the pep club buses. She gave orders at homecoming on how to do the different things, the signs for homecoming. For Turkey Day. There was a Mrs. Burke's way and a wrong way. Guess which way it was done? And the other one was Billy Topper saying that she was always such a dedicated teacher and sweet inspiration. I was always also talked this week with Shannon Workman, which was a 2013 Hall of Fame inductee, but she couldn't be here today. But she said, Mike, to tell you hello. And her daughter, Michaela, is a rising senior, and she's going through the application process for colleges. And she mentioned, and we talked for a while about how she wished her daughter would have had Mrs. Burke for grammar and for sentence diagram. Remember sentence structure? Remember sentence diagramming? Boy, that's a lost art. The noun goes here, the verb goes here, the adjective goes there. Those are things they don't do anymore. But that's something that kids have lost, the talent. We're also saying how students today don't even really know how to write cursive. They don't understand cursive because everything is typed out or printed. But she really appreciated everything that Mrs. Burke had done for her, and she wished that her daughter, Michaela, could have been there for journalism, literature, whatever. And then I have my own story, because you couldn't go to Fort Hill without being running into Mrs. Burke. Whenever I went here, now you could pass through here. I'm telling people, people have told me you could pass through the courtyard. You couldn't come out in the courtyard. You were told not to. But also, you were on lockdown. And when you were let into the school in the morning, until the final bell dismissed you, you could not leave the school grounds. You were here. You could not leave. And that's the way it was. Well, over the course of the year, I have to say that the cafeteria ladies did a great job. They worked so hard. Meals every day. We had over 1,000 students here at this school, and they worked very hard. But, you like a little variance from time to time. Everyone likes a little variance. So a group of us senior guys got together, and we decided that we were going to call Daytrees over on Columbia Street. And if we couldn't go to them, we thought we would see if they could bring it to us. So we got about a dozen of us together, and we called Daytrees, and they said, sure, we'll deliver it to the top of the circle. And we were all excited. But we needed a place to eat our subs and our sandwiches. So we went to Mrs. Burke. You know what Mrs. Burke said? Hey, I'm not using my classroom, use mine. Go, use it, no problem. So the day comes, the van pulls up, we run out, we get our subs, we bring them in. We're in Mrs. Burke's, eating our subs, loving life. The current principal, Robert Scarcelli, burst through the door saying, my school is not going to become a delicatessen. This is it. This is the last day. So we all looked at him and just kept eating. So, but we look back now, and Mrs. Burke was so helpful. I mean, she was like, sure, you can use my room. And if we needed that delicatessen for a day, Colleen Burke's room was the one that was used. So, I know there are principals here today, ex-principals, and I know you might feel differently, but if Mrs. Burke could have become Principal Burke, what a lively school we would have. And I know that Mrs. Burke loved the Big Red, but from talking to all these ex-students, I didn't know she loved red so much as grading her students' term papers with the red ink. That's all they talked about, the red ink of the term papers and what Mrs. Burke would say. So she was just an outstanding woman, and she had done so much for Fort Hill. So and her bio's in here, but please read it. But, just a pleasure to have These Not Words, a winner for 2022, Colleen Burke. Accepting is her son, Mike Burke.
Good afternoon, everyone. I first wish to thank We Are Fort Hill, not only for this meaningful and wonderful recognition for my mother, Colleen Burke, but for everything they do for and within the Fort Hill community. This lovely event is quite meaningful and powerful within our community, and I thank the good people of We Are Fort Hill for living to their pledge of serving Fort Hill well. Next, I wish to congratulate today's Fort Hill Hall of Famers, Larry Boggs, Jared Jacobs, Mr. William Edward Peck Sr., as well as Paul Lapp, who along with my mother is the recipient today of the Deeds Not Words honor. Congratulations and thank you to all for representing the very best Fort Hill has to offer. I also wish to thank Fort Hill Principal Candy Cannon for hosting us here in our beautiful courtyard today and to experience this day with each other. Thank you very much. Close to my heart, I want to thank so many of our family members and friends and loved ones, and many of my mother's students for making the time and covering the travel to be here, coming as far as Tennessee and New Hampshire. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Mother loved all of you so. And I'd be remiss not to mention, at risk of losing my bar stool, for not thanking Charl and Cher and Maggie and the great staff at Oscars for the wonderful meal. And as always, serve us with a lovely smile. I am honored to accept this award on behalf of my late mother, Colleen, who would be so pleased, as well as my late brother, Kevin. Kevin was every bit as proud of Mother as I was, and will always be. We loved her and admired her so, for not only was she our loving mother, she was our best friend and our hero. And I am proud to say Kevin and I have never been alone in these feelings for Mom. One day in the early fall of 1936, Miss Coretta Davis took her first grade class at Penn Avenue School on a field trip. And the classmates walked 2 by 2 from Penn Avenue to Greenway Avenue to pay their first visit to the brand new high school that is Fort Hill. My mother was a member of that class, and that day changed her life forever. My mother, even on her tallest day, was just a tiny little thing. In fact, her father called her Pistol as well as Stormy Weather. Along with Mom and Mother, I called her Scout. My mother told me more than once that on that day that Miss Davis brought these kids here to see Fort Hill, where they would one day attend high school. She had never been so taken in her young life, and she remembered it for her entire life. She said she had never seen such a large, magnificent, and beautiful building in her life. And the best part about that, she said, is that Miss Davis told her students it was ours. Fort Hill High School was for them and for all the kids of South Cumberland who did and would attend school here. Those feelings of inspiration, pride, and ownership for Fort Hill were instilled in my mother on that fall day in 1936. And they stayed with her and in her heart and in her spirit until her final day. Helen Colleen Burke was a 1948 graduate of Fort Hill High School and graduated from West Virginia Wesleyan College in 1952. She was accepted at New York's Columbia University, but her father, Stanley Solomon Burke, told her no daughter of his would be living in New York City, even though his other daughter, Shirley Sue, my mother's most beloved friend, was currently living in New York City, studying at the American School of Ballet. Many times I've wondered how Mother's life would have been so different had my grandfather allowed her to attend Columbia. And I've wondered how all of our lives would have been different. My mother taught physical education at Bell High School for 1 year. She said she loved that job because I got paid to play all day. She also taught English at Glen Burnie Junior High and then Stafford High in Virginia. Mother returned to Cumberland in 1958 to raise her children, and she occasionally worked as a substitute teacher. In the summer of 1967, Miss Mary Calamine, her teacher and mentor at Fort Hill, and then the supervisor of English for Allegheny County Schools, hired Mom as a full-time English teacher at Fort Hill, even though Mom had no idea she even had applied for the job. Miss Calamine made her. For the next 25 years, Mom taught senior and junior English, the American novel, and advanced writing. Journalism, she was English department chair, advisor of the National Honor Society, senior class, Pep Club, and the Sentinel. Her adventures as leader of the Pep Club are legendary. It's a club that Mom built to be over 300 students strong. Mom helped develop the county English curriculum for grades 7 through 12, plus the advanced writing and American novel courses. She retired from full-time teaching in 1993, taught English for 2 years at Allegheny College of Maryland, where she previously served as a member of the Board of Trustees. In October of 2015, Mom was selected to be parade marshal of the South Cumberland Business and Civic Association's 66th annual Halloween parade. It was an honor that meant the world to her because she loved South Cumberland and she loved the children and the students of Fort Hill. My mother lived her life and raised us on faith, family, country, Fort Hill. And depending on who Fort Hill was playing, the order was subject to change. The joys of my mother's life were her family and her students. Being little, she loved to fight, and she lived her life loving and fighting for my brother and me and her students, who in most cases became her lifelong friends. In fact, on the early morning that Mother died, there were 6 of her former students in the hospital room with us. One of her former students, Samantha Zanger Smith, wrote, "Colleen Burke was a special woman. She was a force to be reckoned with, an example of integrity and fierce honesty, and a complete original. There wasn't anyone else like her, and she left an imprint on those in her universe that was positive and permanent. I was lucky to have been one of her students. She will be missed. Mother is missed, but her influence lives on. Those feelings of pride and ownership my mother felt on that day in 1936, I believe are the same feelings that have been passed along to all of us who love Fort Hill. For as my mother told me, South Cumberland was considered to be the other side of the tracks, and we never had anything so beautiful and so wonderful that was truly ours until 1936. I mean, just look at all of us here today. Look at all the former students who come back and continue to come back. Fort Hill is one place that has sustained its love and its spirit for so long, it has evolved into legend. Yet the spirit of Fort Hill is far more than amazing tales and embellishment in our memories. The spirit of Fort Hill is kept fresh and vibrant by kids from all over who come to South End to live out their dreams. The spirit is not a figment of the imagination. It is real, binding forever, past to present, and all those who follow. The spirit is so unique, it's true. It's one of the truest things we have left. Maybe it's all just a myth. Maybe all those things we were raised on or took part in never really happened. But when you realize the service and the lifetime accomplishments of all of those such as Larry Boggs, Commander Jared Thomas Jacobs, William Edward Peck Sr., Paul Lapp, and Colleen Burke, you get the sense they were real. It's just something you can't define, but when you're a student at Fort Hill High School, you know what the spirit is, and you live for it. for your entire life. After all, we are Fort Hill. From the bottom of my heart, I thank God we are, and I thank you all today for this wonderful recognition from my mother.
She's back there. Straight back.
Our next These Not Words recipient is Paul Lapp. Paul Lapp is another person who's a Fort Hill graduate, but once again, they do so much to help Fort Hill. And you read his bio, all the things that he has done. I know anyone who goes to a Fort Hill game and sees the inflatable helmet that the team runs through, the person, one of the big people helping inflate that helmet is Paul Lapp. And of course, then again, I found out through getting ready for this luncheon that Charlotte, his wife, they make a team that is almost insurmountable. Councilman Roxioni sent me a letter, wanted me to say a few things to you both, Paul. He said that thank you, Paul, for all of your all-out efforts to serve Cumberland through your participation in our Let's Beautify Cumberland group. With his wife, Charlotte, who's been the longtime treasurer of the Let's Beautify Cumberland, the Lapps are always ready to jump in to help with any endeavor to clean up and spruce up the great city of Cumberland. Congratulations, Paul. Thank you so much for all of your many hours that you have given to Let's Beautify Cumberland, and thank you for serving the Fort Hill community. So can't be said better. Deeds Not Words 2022 recipient Paul Lapp.
This thing falls off here, be careful. Boy, I gotta follow these other ones. That's really gonna be tough to do. I'm just a common little ordinary man that knows the Lord Jesus Christ. I graduated from, well, I didn't graduate. I left Gephardt in 1953 and up here at Fort Hill in the 7th grade. We were supposed to find our classes. We went every direction. Well, we found them. Through the years of Fort Hill, I got on the Fort Hill Sentinel bus. And there's Fort Hill people, and then there's Fort Hill Sentinel people. Well, I got on the bus, and it's been a ride that I'll never forget. When I was little, I was playing with a little neighbor girl. I was only about like that. Her brother come home. He was dressed up, and he's dressed blues from the Marine Corps. You could ask me that day on what I was going to be. I was going to be a United States Marine. I graduated from Fort Hill High School in 1959, Paris Island, South Carolina, 1959, Marine Corps boot camp. And I want to tell you, that was tough back then anyway. So I went on and I kind of got away from Fort Hill there for a few years. I was born and raised in the country out Bedford Road. There wasn't any city water, wasn't anything. We had outhouses and stuff. And I used to run. Oh, I'd run down through the fields, up the hills, around the rim. But I was the only child, but I had a lot of family and friends that I didn't really miss being the only child. And then I was on the bus when they built Moonglow, Ferdinand's, Lindy's Restaurant, and I was roller skating this one night, and this young girl was skating around there with hair down to here, beautiful. And I was sitting on the sideline there, and there was a couple older people there, and they kept, boy, she's really pretty, look at her. Well, I skated out to her. I don't even know what I said. I had no idea I skated from here to that building there, and I was going to spend the rest of my life with her. We'll be married 60 years, 21st of next month. And she's a wonderful lady. I have no regrets whatsoever. And the best part about it, she's a Fort Hill Sentinel. She got on the bus with me. And we've had a ride. Oh my, we've had a ride. If we'd go to away games on the buses, I used to ride Dave Christopher's. We get down there and they said, yeah, we heard there's a lot of people coming, and they'd had 2 porta potties for 3,000 people. That's exciting. So they opened the big gates on the fence. The women went to the left, the men went to the right, and I'm not making it up, that's what we did. And some of the older ones was there. The next year they couldn't understand why all the trees died. so anyway, they say behind a good man there's a good lady. I got 3 of them sitting at that table down there. 2 daughters and a wife. But anyway, it's been a ride. And I went to school with Paul Donahue, and he was a brilliant carpenter, and he could build anything. He could build kitchen cabinet. I mean, it wasn't anything he couldn't build. And he built the trophy cases that's in before you go into the basketball court, the one in the lobby and everything. And we worked on the wall back here. So Paul said to me one day, he said, you know, them bricks are going to fall off. He said, we ought to take them off. And I said, you sure? He said, yeah. So Steve Lewis gave him the okay, because he had worked at Steve Lewis's house building things for him. So I thought this ought to be fun. So we took the caps off the wall, and he was right. We had a hammer jizz on that. Boy, I mean, about 40 of them started to come, and I'm like this. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And to make a long story short, we took 1,300 bricks off the wall, and they were cleaned. Another young man that graduated with us was John Northcraft. He was a bricklayer by trade, and he proceeded to put the bricks back on. And that took 3 summers, what all we did there. I painted the back of the wall twice by myself. And just other things. We got the 25-second clocks, and Paul and I worked 3 weeks down there putting them up and everything. And then we have this helmet. And I was a meat cutter at Martin's. I'll tell you how this thing came about. I went up to the front office up there, and there was this big Coke display. And on the top of that was this big red plastic helmet with a white face mask. Boy, I ran right in the office and I said, what are you going to do with that? Oh, some woman claimed it. I said, some woman claimed it? I said, that should go to Fort Hill. Well, I told Robbie Dolly and Paul, and they got on the computer, and Coke had 2 of them left. So we bought one, and Wayne Shook bought the other one. And boy, they was cheap. They fell apart. Oh. But in the process of looking for that, we seen this company that makes these helmets and stuff. They make all the stuff for the parades in California and all. This company's huge. So we got a hold of the guy and talked about how, oh yeah, he said, we build helmets and all. And he said, so we got the next size down from the NFL, and it was $6,000. So we ordered it, and he said, well, we got to have half the money down. So Paul right away pulled his credit card out, put $3,000 on his credit card. And we proceeded to get this helmet. And we came and we blew it up in the gym, and somebody said to run down and get Barry. And that's what we did. And he come up, and his eyes were about this big around. And the helmet, every year we take it down, we clean it, scrub it, armor all it, put it back in the box. And if the wind's blowing, I went this high off the ground trying to hold it, and Paul was on the other side, and we were actually going up in the air, and I don't know how we got it back down, but we did. Our principal, she did the same thing, her and Robbie. They almost went up in the orbit too. So if the wind's blowing real hard and you don't see that helmet, that's the reason why. And then another thing, we try not to put it up in the rain. Not that you can't use it, you could use it for a tent, but you can't put it away wet. And Paul and I was up 3:30 in the morning in the old gym drying the thing out. So we try not to put it in, we know we can't put it in the wind, but we try not to put it up in the rain just because it's really a job. But that's how the helmet came about. So then the next thing we know, this person needs something done down here. And being in the Marine Corps, you'd think I'd know better than raise my hand. But every time they needed something done, ask Paul Lapp. Paul Donahue passed away. Buck Janke passed away, another great friend of mine that helped us do things. And then we come along and we put the flags up on the poles every day for the team. I remember when he played ball. We used to carry a extension ladder around and put them in the poles and on up and down. Well, the boy, that became old. And Braddock Electric donates their bucket truck. Well, we're down there, Buck and myself and Paul and Pat Helmstead, and we're putting these things up. And down here by the church, it's busy. Alleghany's up there doing things, and it's really busy. And Robbie don't do anything but go up to Buck and pull his sweatpants down. Oh, right in the middle of the street. The guy almost fell out of the bucket truck, and we laughed so hard. And Buck, he was kind of not real good anyway. He tried to pull him up, and he got him up. Oh, I'm gonna get even with you. And so Robbie always wore sweatpants too. And I thought, sure, down there in the stadium, someday them pants were coming down. But Buck left him be. But again, I tell you, when you go to these away games, it is funny. We was down at another there, and Mike's dad was there, and me and Paul was in there in the concession stand there, and they really hadn't got there yet, the people, and they had about 6 hot dogs there and a few boxes of candy and stuff. And I said, "You realize how many people's coming here?" I said, "You're looking at about 3,000. Boy, well, I'm telling you, what a mess that was. But it's been a ride. It really has. And I had double heart surgery in May, and I'm 82 years old. And I hope I got a lot of years to still ride that train, that bus. I appreciate the coaches, and if they ever need anything, they can call me. I'll do the best I can. I pretty much know where everything is down there. And my story's not as proper as some of them. I didn't fly a plane. I was in a couple of them, though, and some choppers, but I didn't fly none of them. But I thank the Lord for everybody, and He's very important in my life, my family. And I just pray for these young people, and I wish education is very, very important, number one. Lord Jesus Christ is one, and education's two. I was in the country there, and I ran. Oh my, I'd run all the time, up and down the hills and around and run. I mean, I could run. And I had a gift of catching a football. I didn't care if there was 18 guys after me. If that ball was meant for me, I was going to get it. So I went out for football here at Fort Hill. And they put us on a practice field, and there must have been about 20 other boys. And we had to run down where it drops off and back. I was down there on my way back when the other ones got down there. And the coach said, "Lapp," he said, "you go in there and get your uniform." And Coach Hahn. And I did stuff everybody can regret doing something. But I practiced for 3 weeks. I was just a little skinny guy. And I went into his office and I said, "Coach, I'm quitting." And oh my gosh, he come up out of that chair and he said, "Boy," he said, "I had big plans with you." He said, "The way you can catch a ball and your speed, I had big." It went there and come right out the other side. But that's one of the regrets that I really regret, because I think I could have had a record of catching a football. I could catch a football, and I still get, as 82 years old, can catch a football. And I want to thank everybody that's here today. Thank everybody that recommended me for this, me up here talking to you. And if there's anything I can help Fort Hill with, hey, I'm available, and my wife's right behind me too. And I love Fort Hill. I love Fort Hill. This is me, Paul Lapp, Fort Hill Sentinel. Thank you for everything. I can keep going. He said come back. One other little thing. I always tell a joke or something. Why did the chicken cross the road? He wanted to prove to the possum it could be done.
Look straight back. She's right back there.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I don't smile. My kids give me heck. That's why my daughter and dad. Thank you. Here, I want to thank you.
I don't want to be too critical because Coach Zach Alkire is here, but Paul, you might have been able to catch a lot of passes, but Fort Hill, we don't throw. And that's the truth. First off, all of the Hall of Fame inductees and the Deeds Not Words winners, we'd like to get some photos here at the end of this luncheon, so please be here, be available. We want to get some photos. Also, the centerpieces that are in all the tables, the flowers. It's each table, you can argue over who gets the centerpiece. But leave the red dishes, because we'll use them again next year. So I thank you.
Can I say when you're done, guys, have
Well, come on. Come on up. Come on up.
There we go. One more time.
There's a man comes to, I haven't seen him lately, but he comes from Hagerstown with two other men, and he loves football. He comes every game, but I think he's health-span. We have a set of books that this man researched from 1937 all the way up of football. You're in there, every yard you made, everybody's in there. And there's two of them right now, and he has the other up to the present time, but he doesn't have the money to research. But we have 35 cases of them. We don't know what to do with them. Candy can tell you we're thinking about throwing them in the garbage. But if anybody'd like to see me, and I'll see that we can get out and get some for you, because it's going to be a shame to throw them. And they're not just an old paperback book. They're really, really something I know you'd probably like to have. In fact, I got some out in a couple in my van I'll give you. And for anybody else, just, man, but once you see them, you think, go ahead, you're going to throw them away. Yeah, they're in our road. We have to throw them away. Thank you.
Thanks, thanks.
Yes, they are beautiful books. The ones, the most recent one goes up to 1979. Yes, and then the other ones, like you said, the more present ones are, he hasn't had the time to put it together yet. So they are available. So anyway, centerpieces are available. Photos be available for after we're done the luncheon. We thank you again, everyone, for coming. It's been a great afternoon. At this time, I'd like to ask Dr. George Brown for today's benediction.
I think I've been to every dinner, and it never, ever gets old. So thank you so much to the We Are Fort Hill Committee, and again, congratulations to the awards recipients today. Let's give everybody a round of applause. So let us bow our heads, please, for the benediction. Holy and eternal God, we again thank you for your good and everlasting grace. We thank you for giving us the time to gather to celebrate the grace-filled lives of those we have honored today. We thank you for your abundant grace that is shown to us each and every day, and we ask that you continue to guide us to do your will in all that we say and do. As we depart today, please let us be mindful. You are always present. We pray for safe travel for those going far and near. And the people of God say, Amen.